So when a former president says that the way we elect presidents is wrong, you know that something is off. Today we're unpacking Thabo Mbeki's call to rethink how we elect our leaders, how cities will soon have to earn their funding, and why school fees keep rising faster than inflation. Plus, in the Wildcard, how a single strand of fiber built the backbone of South Africa's digital future. My friends, if you are enjoying the show, be sure to like and subscribe. And now, without further ado, let's get into it. Former President Thabo Mbeki has just said the way South Africa chooses its presidents is wrong. Look, it's not the kind of line you usually hear from someone who once held that office, let alone a former ANC leader whose own party still holds the presidency. He explained that South Africans don't elect their president directly. Parliament does. MPs simply vote along party lines, generally without ever asking if that person they're appointing is actually fit for the job. Reflecting on his own experience, Mbeki said that Parliament had no idea what he was capable of when they chose him, and they never bothered to ask. Now, interestingly enough, his comments land as Parliament wrestles with long-delayed plans to change how South Africans vote. The panel set up to propose a new system couldn't agree, producing two conflicting reports. The big question now is whether to stick with the partyless system or to move toward constituency elections, where voters choose local representatives directly. Now, Mbeki also took aim at the National Development Plan, calling it a vision rather than a plan. It outlines where South Africa should be by 2030, but never how to get there. It's impractical. And in a final jab, he said politicians aren't thought leaders, and that fixing South Africa starts with rethinking who leads it and how. So for the first time, South Africa's biggest cities will have to prove they can do their jobs before getting national funds. Government has completed its first independent review of metro performance, and soon additional support from Treasury will go to cities that show real results, not empty promises or cleaner plans on paper. This forms part of Operation Vulindlela, a joint project by the Presidency and Treasury to fix how our cities are managed and restore basic services that have been failing for years. Now, 7 metros have already joined, signing off on 8 key accountability rules that they must meet to qualify for funding. In the end, the idea is simple. Cities that manage money properly, improve services, and deliver for residents will earn more financial support. And those that don't, won't. So each metro must create separate units to manage water and electricity like proper businesses, collecting payments, fixing infrastructure, and keeping clean books instead of relying on endless bailouts. The government has set aside 54 billion rand over 7 years to make it happen, and by 2026, every major metro must prove it can manage its own utilities transparently and sustainably, or risk losing additional national support. Education inflation keeps outpacing the cost of living, and 2026 will be no exception. You see, most private schools plan fee hikes of between 5 and 8%, with some climbing past 10. Some curious schools' grade 12 fees alone jump nearly 14%, with schools in Joburg, Durban, and Tshwane also announcing increases of up to 8%. Public schools, though, are also following suit, with many of the country's 3,000 fee-charging schools preparing for rises of around 5%, even as inflation sits at just 3.4%. Now, the schools say that they have little choice here. Teachers' salaries, electricity, fuel, and maintenance have all risen far faster than general prices, while government subsidies for low-fee institutions keep shrinking. Parents, meanwhile, understandably are struggling to keep up. Unpaid fees and exemptions are now worth as much as 10 billion rand nationwide. It's a gap that keeps widening every year, household incomes rising slowly, school costs racing ahead. So for thousands of families, quality education is no longer just expensive, it's starting to feel out of reach. And before we cruise on to our Bagel Bite of the day, here's a couple other headlines worth knowing. For starters, the Reserve Bank governor continues to push that lowering South Africa's inflation target to 3% would protect poorer households, cut government debt costs, and create a more stable growth path. The Treasury hasn't yet formally approved the shift. Stats SA has warned that it is running out of money to collect reliable data. With hundreds of unfilled posts, outdated systems, and delayed surveys, experts say that the country's stats credibility and key economic decisions are now at risk. And I thought I read this wrong, but South Africa's trade surplus surged to 21.8 billion rand in September, up sharply from 2.4 billion rand the month before. Higher exports in gold, platinum, and surprisingly vehicles drove the jump. And on to our Bagel Bite of the day. Let's see what you got. The question is, what's the approximate circumference of Earth? Is it A, 40,000 kilometers, B, 70,000 kilometers, or C, 80,000 kilometers? We'll give you the answer at the end of the show. And on to our wildcard section. The story of Thabo starts long before you may think, all the way back to the 1970s, when engineers first sent darts through strands of glass thinner than human hair. It then took decades to move from labs to living rooms, but by the mid-2000s, some countries were wiring entire cities with it. South Africa joined the race a couple of years later with our first large-scale Thabo rollout beginning in 2009, linking business districts before slowly spreading into homes. So in just over a decade, what began as a luxury for gated estates has now become the backbone of South Africa's digital economy, powering remote work, streaming, and small businesses trading with the world. It's also closing the gap between the connected and the unconnected, especially through programs that link schools directly to the grid. For example, OpenServe, the country's largest network operator, has spent the past decade laying over 180,000 kilometers of fiber and helping to connect over 400 schools and 40,000 learners. And so with World Fiber Day being today, believe it or not, this story isn't really about cables. It's about how a strand of light invented half a century ago ended up carrying the weight of South Africa's digital future. You know, the kind of connection that the likes of OpenServe have spent the past 10 years building towards. And as for that Bagel Bite, the answer is A, about 40,000 kilometers, which means that the 180,000 kilometers of fiber that OpenServe has laid across South Africa could wrap around the earth more than 4 times and still have enough left over to connect a couple more schools. And my friends, that's it for today's show. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you guys all had a great start to the week. Be kind to one another, and we'll catch you all tomorrow for the next round of the good stuff. God bless.